Well, welcome everybody. Today's presentation is presented by DSPS and it's called Don't Pour Gas on the Fire. And this was a saying from our old learning disability specialist, Linda Ryther. And if you have been able to avoid the internet for the last couple of years, you might not understand the little picture we have on here, but I'm sure we've all seen it. It's of a little dumpster with a fire going on saying, it's fine, I'm fine, everything is fine, when sometimes it is not. So we'll get into this in a second. I just have a few questions for you. They're kind of silly, but in the chat, if you can get your chat open and ready, I have a question. So here we go. On a scale of cats, how are you feeling? So in the chat, tell me how you're feeling based off of these cats. Are you a 1, 2, 3? Okay, we got a 2, a 3. Oh, yes, Pedro, I agree. A 9, yes, Hannah, very good. 8, Fucci, like, I'm here. Yes, okay, cool, right on. Okay, agreed. I'm a little out of it today. I don't know if everybody else has been getting sick, but yeah, that's my life right now. But okay, next question for you. On a scale of cats, how was your winter break? Okay, so tell me how that was been going. Back to my chat. A 1. Yay, yes, agreed. A 1. Oh, everybody's a 1 and a 2. Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, depending on the day. Agreed. A 3, yes. Very good. All right, next question. On a scale of cats, how do you feel about the spring semester coming up? Spring 2025. How are you feeling about it? Chat. Ooh, a 10. Oh, a 10. Pedro, there is no 10, but I love it. Bucci, an 8. Okay, a 9. Okay, cool, cool. Right on, right on. For some reason, it's not letting me keep my little thing here, but there we go. Okay. And then chat. Okay, very good. All right, last question with the cats, okay? So, on a scale of cats, how do you feel about flex day presentations? What do you think? You're all 8, yeah. Okay, Alejandra, I like it. Yeah. 8, yep, Sue, agreed. It's like, I'm here. At least they're on Zoom, right? Hallelujah. So, yeah, agreed, agreed. Now, if you have to give one, I'm usually a 5, right? So, okay. Well, anyways, that's just to get things started and to see if anybody else came in. So let's move on. So back to don't pour gas on the fire. So where did this come from? It did come from Linda Ryther. And you might think it's from, a recent meme of the dumpster fire, but Linda would say this because some students with disabilities, psychological disabilities, learning disabilities, have this low fire burning inside due to anxiety, irritability, discomfort in the world that they have to carry with them because of their disability. So we don't want to make situations worse by accidentally throwing gas on this fire, right? We want to instead be a calming source for our students and to let them know that we're on their side. So to get back to kind of the objective of this presentation is practical ways instructors and counselors can support students with disabilities. Now, I find that sometimes it's nice to know what we won't get into in a presentation to lessen the confusion or your expectations. I don't know if you've seen this quote, but this is one of my favorite quotes about expectations. Expectations are just resentments under construction. So if you kind of think about that, if you have this expectation that I'm going to learn all this and then I don't, then you're just going to resent whatever's going to happen. And that's with life, right? So to avoid that, I thought it might be good to go over non-objectives, what we're not going to go over in this presentation, just to kind of see what you think. So I'm not here to diagnose, treat, or dispute what is or isn't a disability, okay? I am also not the disability authority or expert, so please feel free to share your experiences and have grace with each other and me as we discuss disability topics. And lastly, this is not an exhaustive list on all the ways that you can help a student with disabilities. So share your thoughts and opinions. I want to know what all of us can bring to the table. Now, the first class I had when I knew I wanted to work with students with disabilities, the professor said this. He said, there are 3 things you can't teach a person. And this really stuck with me because I thought, what can't you teach somebody? He said, the first thing you can't teach somebody is problem solving skills. Now, you've probably heard the saying, I can't help you solve your problems, right? The second thing he said you can't teach is critical thinking. And I can't help you think through your issues either, right? And the last thing he said you can't teach is you can't teach somebody to care. But I think at Reedley College and at the DSPS office, we try to do these 3 things every day. And that's why I love where we work. It's why we do what we do. Because maybe in the past, we've watched and learned from somebody in our educational path that fostered hope in us, that taught us problem solving, critical thinking, and to care. But we live and work in an imperfect system with imperfect people, and we have a lot of challenging biases, especially when it comes to disability. So for example, have you heard or have you even used these biases towards people with disabilities? Here's the first one. Any statement starting with those students. Oh, you're part of that group. Oh, you're in that office, or you meet with that counselor. Okay, this one. Wondering if a student should be directed to a different major based on your concerns about their employability in that field, right? And don't get me wrong, I've had this thought too, right? About some students. And the last one, referring a student with a disability to someone else for help that a counselor or an instructor would usually provide to students who are struggling. Any student, you would typically help them, but because they're one of those students, you might be like, go to DSPS. Just go over there, right? When normally you would have helped that student anyway. Okay, so these don't foster problem-solving skills, critical thinking, or a caring heart. They actually pour gas on that fire. So for any of us to overcome our biases or push away possibly a difficult or a student with a disability, there must be 3 things to motivate us to do anything. So for this little exercise, I want you to think of something you don't want to do.
Oh, gas on the fire.
Okay, so right now, think about something you don't want to do. So have that in your mind. And in the book, The Motivation Breakthrough by Richard Lavoie, he has a lot of stuff online about disability, which I think you should go see. He says we need 3 elements to motivate us. And if we don't have these 3 things, we're not going to be motivated. So think about the thing you don't want to do in your mind with these. All right, so to be motivated, you must have these 3 elements. Number 1, the task must be attractive. Okay, so what can I get out of going to your math class or going to your English class? Well, maybe you can get confidence out of it. How can it contribute to your goals? Will it increase your brain power? Those are all attractive things that students might want. And so selling this assignment to a student, it must be attractive. It must be going towards a goal. The second thing you need is the amount of effort needed must be realistic. So sometimes breaking down the task into manageable tasks will help the students feel more likely that they'll reach their goal because it's more realistic. And that's the third part. It has to be likely that you can accomplish the task. So think about that thing you don't want to do. And if you can check off the list of these 3 things, you're more likely for it to happen. So let's say the thing you don't want to do is work with a student with disabilities. Now let's apply these 3 things to that. So how can you make this task working with a student with a disability attractive, okay? Meaning they can help us as a college have our persistence, graduation, and transfer rates, right? So you can see them not as you're kind of seeing them as a statistics, but you're seeing them as a possible way to maybe improve your learning and teaching in the classroom. Because I've had a student who gave a suggestion to a teacher based on how they learn, and the teacher picked up on it, and they actually realized that was better for everybody. Okay, so the amount of effort needed to be realistic. that word realistic in the DSPS office is used all the time. You know, we want to make sure that we can chunk out realistic goals for our students and take it a piece at a time rather than the whole thing. And we also tell our students the accommodations also must be realistic and reasonable, okay? So that it will be likely that you can accomplish your task. Now at the DSPS office, we typically don't say no to our students. More, we want to use these elements to chunk it out and find the way that we can help you reach your goal without saying no. This helps us to inspire, direct, and support your students without, you know, having those biases kind of creep in. So, and then that is, those 3 steps are Richard Lavoie, the motivational breakthrough. But again, we work with students that it's really hard and we just don't want to pour more gas on that fire, right? So we've talked about biases. We've talked about not using the terms of those students and how to be motivated to work with our students. And those are the kind of happy and things like that. So real quick, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Feel free to share, maybe even in the chat, but have you been in a situation where you may have accidentally poured gas on the fire? I know I have. So if you think about it, if you want to share, go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself. Feel free to share. I'll tell you one that I had just recently. You know, the conversation started out fine and then things started to escalate. And instead of me trying to de-escalate, I just matched their escalation, right? And it started to, and I could feel myself doing it. And I really, it was really difficult. And I know that in some situations you do kind of have to match it, right? Like in a police situation, but when it's a counseling situation, we want to always try, or instructional, try to de-escalate the situation because it's not appropriate to match the escalation. For us at DSPS, I feel like recently there has been an uptick of these situations of pouring gas on the fire. We're under a lot of stress. Our students are under a lot of stress. Yeah, it's stressful. Now, I don't see anything in the chat, but maybe Ashley, do you see anything? Oh, yep, somebody.
Well, Becky said that she has been in a situation where she's poured gas on the fire. And I think we all have, and maybe unintentionally, because we don't want to make things worse. But sometimes I feel like when I'm with a student and it's getting heated and they're not hearing me and I'm telling them something and I'm like, you're not listening. I just want to be like, listen. But especially with like mental health, it's hard because students sometimes can't control those emotions. And instead of getting escalated, then yes, it's hard to step back, but that's been a hard one. Amanda, Amanda said it seems easier to do with email correspondence versus face-to-face interaction. Yeah. Because tone
Absolutely.
are different
Yes.
on email.
Yes. I've noticed that too, Amanda, since a lot more is done over email. I try to start off the email like, thank you so much for asking this question, or, you know, that's a great question, so that I hopefully set a nicer tone at the beginning instead of like, I've already emailed you about this 5 times. Did you see the last one I sent you? Like, that's what I really want to say. But yes, I love that. Yeah, that's actually a really good point about emails for sure. Yeah.
I
Thank you
think
for
for me, a lot of most of the issues that I've had have been when a student is on the autism spectrum, and I think it's just things are misunderstood, or um, I would say something and then it just like I said, not meaning to pour gas on the fire or whatever, but it kind of has hit a sensitive spot with that student unknowingly, and then it takes a lot more to build back that trust and understanding. So that's what's in my mind right now. The most, I mean, it's happened a few times, and that's hard because I would like to be better about that and just be more sensitive to conversations.
I'm right there with you for sure, especially the misunderstanding. And sometimes the way we say it, they don't comprehend it, or maybe I was trying to joke around with them and they don't understand humor or what I was trying to get
I
at.
think the humor is a big issue, right? I might say something more lightly and it's taken more literal, and yeah, that's
Yep.
hard.
I struggle with that too. And then I realize I'm like, oh, okay, black and white. Let's keep it to the facts, you know? Yeah, for sure. And when we have this goal in mind, we don't want to make somebody else's behavior change our disposition in that situation, right? And that's really hard because I'm more of reactionary. But if we can maybe take a step and even say, can I think about your question for a second? Like, and give yourself some time to get back at it, because I start to feel a little bit riled up for sure. Rebecca, let's see. I've used AI to respond neutrally to a challenging situation. It was beautiful. Yes, agreed. I once had a text message from a friend and I didn't know how to respond because it was kind of a heightened thing. And so I put it into chat and I said, how do I respond to this? And instead it felt like Chat GPT was having like a therapy session with me. And it was like, oh, it's okay, calm down, you know. And I was like, oh, that was so sweet. So I agree. AI, we can use it in that way as well. So thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that. It's very good. They do take a nicer tone for sure. Okay, well, now I'm going to mention something on the next slide that you might see that more of these instances of pouring gas on the fire are happening because of this. Now, I'm not saying correlation is causation, but have you seen the impact of AB 705, AB 1705 that's coming up in the fall when it comes to math and English? So with that, you get more anxiety of students that might not be prepared for these classes. It's likely that instructors and counselors might see more of a stress reaction in class and in counseling appointments. And instructors and counselors need to be prepared to reassure and encourage students to consider staying in the course to work on building their skills, which will eventually pay off and pass the class. It might be easy to just say, well, just withdraw, just drop it, or push it off until later. But at DSPS, we often encourage students to earn their F. I know a lot of people do not like that term, but instead of completely just dropping the class, we say, stay in the class, do your best, finish it up, learn as much as you can, so that when you do take it again, you can build on what you've learned. And every situation is different, but I want you to team up with your students. Not yet doesn't mean not ever, right? So Carol Dweck, she recommends using the verbiage of not yet as often as possible in relation to grades that are not at a passing level. This can help students take step-by-step approach and build hope for future success. So just that simple phrase of, you know what? You haven't passed this class yet, but let's try it again. You haven't mastered that concept yet, but let's take a step back and build on there. Angela Duckworth recommends helping students to develop grit, to persist and work hard to accomplish a long-term goal when faced with adversity rather than giving up. So back to that motivation thing, make it attractive. Hey, because of this, you have learned more grit and you know now how to persevere through difficult situations. Always kind of try that positive side. So here's a question to you guys. How do you team up with your students? Oh, and Amanda, love using the term not proficient yet on my rubrics. Oh, that is actually very good. That positive aspect of it. That's actually very good. I'm going to write that down. How else do you guys team up with your students? It's okay if you don't have anything yet. I have some suggestions on the next slide. Here we go. Let's do that. So here's some ways to team up with your student and maximize the communication and de-escalation of things. So when a student is experiencing or expressing negative emotions, first recognize what's happening. Just say it like it is. It seems like you're frustrated today. Because that will allow them to feel heard. Try to understand the student's needs, viewpoint, and what might have triggered their reaction. And then contextualize their response. Don't jump to the conclusion that they're just being bad or disrespectful or out of control. Or, then assigning, oh, they're just one of those students, right? So listen and reflect back to students their change talk. Now, this change talk comes from this idea of motivational interviewing. And it's kind of like what Amanda said, not proficient yet. You actually you take the positive and you throw back the positive and not the negative aspect of what somebody's saying. So here's some examples, because sometimes this is hard to listen for. So student comes into the appointment and he says, you came to the appointment frustrated, but you did show up. That's progress. Thanks for showing up. Always look for the positive aspect. Next one, you're not passing the class right now. What are some ways you've been able to pass classes in the past? So draw upon past success to help them apply it to this class that they might be struggling in. So you're recognizing the bad at the beginning, right? But you're always putting out the hope at the end with this change talk. Another one, completing your degree or certificate is so important to you, you're willing to attend tutoring every week. Okay, so tell them, I know that this is an important class for you to pass, and it's so important, you're willing to sacrifice time to come into the tutoring office, okay? So always put back forth that change. It's also not a power struggle, which, oh man, I was even telling Ashley this morning about it. They come in, they're like, well, my sister said this. And I'm like, well, I'm saying this, and your sister's not a counselor and I am, so it's not a power struggle with your students. They can think what they think, use calming verbiage and tone, keep your hands down as I'm like talking to you with my hands up, but that is something that with certain disabilities, you might want to think about, how am I using my hands? Because sometimes that can be distracting and or not offensive, but might escalate the situation. Try to have an open and relaxed posture. Sometimes with certain disabilities, don't overwhelm them with eye contact. You can be like, that's a really good question, and kind of look away and think, to give the student a little bit of a break from you staring at them, right? And that constant eye contact. I do that all the time because really I am trying to think about what I'm going to say. Oh, what are some ways to respond when he says, well, my sister says this? Absolutely. Yeah. So what I said is, oh, that's great that you have people that are trying to help you. I'm trying to help you too. That's what I told him. Because I said, oh, I love that you're asking your family for support. So let me tell you what I know, because I've helped students in the past with this exact problem, and then and it worked out this way. So that's kind of how I do it when I hear this. I also hear this a lot. Well, another counselor told me this. And I say, yes, they are right. Yes, that actually is right. But in your particular situation, this is how I might approach it. And then I don't ever want to talk down about anybody else, their advice they're getting, because I'm so glad they're asking other people for advice. That's advocating for themselves. And so, yeah. But great question, Amanda. That is hard. And then I have a struggle with, and I need to work on this with personal relationships, is to listen more, talk less. I'm not there to change their opinion. Okay, enough said. Now, as I go, okay, a few more. Let's see here. Use compassionate responses. I can understand. I can see how that would be frustrating, upsetting, irritating. Absolutely, use those kinds of things. We want to partner with them. So if a student is not passing your class, you want to be like, I'm on the same side. I want the same thing for you. I want you to pass my class. I'm not here to fail everybody. I am here to help you learn and to pass. Use open-ended questions. How can I help you? Now, remember, it has to be realistic, okay? So when they're calm and ready, provide specific steps or tasks to help them break down an issue, an assignment, to help them feel like it is attainable. So a question to you: how do you maximize communication with your students? What are some things that you guys have used? So think about it. If you want to share in the chat.
You mentioned it, Danielle. I actually use motivational interviewing. So basically repeating back to them what they've just shared with me, because that'll kind of affirm that you've been listening. So even if listening is a hard task or something you want to work on, even just repeating what they've just shared back with you is that first step in that direction. Then they already feel like, okay, I'm in a safe place. I can vent and talk and understand that I'm going to be heard, and I'm also going to get, communication on the other end. So I also use just motivational interviewing. And granted, I'm not faculty, but I am in a student serving role where students do come in and they do share, well, this counselor told me this, or, they told me I need to do this. And it's like, okay, or, because we're their sounding board, and they vent and they share personal and professional challenges. And so it's important to also realize that sometimes it's not personal. Sometimes it's not us that they're mad at or that it's holding them back. And so it's important to remember that and not take that home or personal, and just understand their perspective. And so that's right out the gate. What I use is just reaffirming what they've told me. And then I approach it as like, okay, we're going to partner. It's not you as a student, me as the job developer, or me as the teacher, or me as the counselor. We're going to approach this together. We're going to partner together. So I need you to meet me halfway, and I'm going to meet you the other way. So that's just kind of how I approach it with the students. And it seems to work, because then it's not like they feel like they're on their own, or it's just us against each other. It is more of that collaboration. That's another term I use with them as well.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, Veronica. And yeah, you're in a tough spot because you can't give them a job, right? But you can point them in the right direction. And I would have taken that out. Oh, I can't get you a job. I'm sorry. Oh, it's all on me. I'm sorry. Same with oh, I can't get the degree for you. I really want you to, or meeting these deadlines. You can't take that on. There is that collaborative work. I'll help you as much as I can, but also putting some ownership on the student as well, for sure. Yeah, that's good. Kimberly Mullins, I start my class by saying, you all have the ability to pass this class, and I want you to succeed. I'm here to support you. Love it. You're right. They all have the ability to pass the class. Very good. Very good. I like that. Yep, that positive, assumptive approach to classes. I'm assuming you're going to pass. That's my goal here, right? And I'm positive about it. That's cool. Now, you guys are already doing great work, and thank you so much. But don't forget, you have DSPS partners on your side as well. So please communicate with the DSPS counselors. Get to know us and the appropriate ways to refer a student to us. We can help you plan an intervention strategy if additional assistance is needed, because some students with mental health disorders or other disabilities might not be connected with us because they technically don't have to. It is student driven. They don't have to come and see us. So even if they've shared with you all the list of things that they struggle with, they still don't have to use our services. But that doesn't mean you can't start the conversation about why they should come and see us. So some of the disability categories that we have, you might have seen these, but a lot of people think of the ones that are visible, physical disability, blindness, low vision, other, physical disabilities and things like that. But we work a lot with students that have learning disabilities, autism spectrum, mental health disabilities, and other conditions. Recently, we go and talk to the veterans every semester. Ashley and I went and saw them this week, and we gave them this list of disabilities that they're not commonly talked about or even considered that do qualify for students to have services. And they include ADHD, anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, hearing loss that affects your education, traumatic brain injury, and learning disabilities, which we can assess for this. Patrick is here. Thank you, Patrick, for being here. So if you feel that a student, you notice, oh, this is their third time in this class, and they seem to hit a wall with certain tasks, please have them come and see us. That would be great. On Aaron Cobb, a quick tip for listening, helping students feel heard. Use you statements. Yes, you're feeling really frustrated right now. You're worried about this assignment and you really want to pass this class. Yes, exactly. The whole idea of, I hear you saying this is kind of like outdated. I'm sure it'll come back around in like 20 years or so. But for right now, the you statements seem to be the ones that are, they grab your attention because oh, you really want this. It's not me reflecting back what I think you said. It's literally saying what you just said. So thank you, Aaron. And Aaron is a great resource for motivational interviewing. If you want any more information, I'm sure he'd be happy to help you. Okay, so a question back to you guys. How do you encourage a student to check out DSPS? Have you ever done this? How did it go? What did you say? How did you say it? Or you're like, nope, I don't do that. I just tell them to go to tutoring.
I can share. Sometimes if students have repeated, like, let's say math multiple times, I ask them, I ask them about how they've done in the past. And then I've shared with them that I've had other students who have repeated math multiple times, and then they realize they actually have like a learning disability with math, and being able to get the accommodations through the DSPS services allowed them to be successful in passing the class. And so I'll, a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, I might, or I do need some extra help, and they'll be a little bit more open to it. And then I start recommending, and I give them information to refer them.
Beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Recognizing patterns of behavior for sure, and bringing it to their attention. Because they might be like, oh, that's normal. Like, yeah, I had to repeat stuff in high school too. So yeah. And then Alejandra, thank you. Share the benefits of being part of DSPS. Wonderful, which I'll show you in a second. So if it's hard for you to have that conversation with a student, showing the benefits and showing that it's another support service on campus. So very good. So at DSPS, we're trying to promote this idea. And I've actually seen some commercials recently on TV about this idea, but it's disability is not a bad word. Have you guys been seeing this kind of campaign out there? And it's not. I think there is a stigma sometimes attached to it. And you can share that with a student. Say, I know that going into a building that says disabled student programs and services might not be what you want to do. But when you see that it's not a bad word, it's actually a resource for you to get help. Now, getting help is sometimes hard for some students to ask for, but we try to make it as easy as possible. So I want to tell you a quote that I really like about this guy, this little guy on the next slide. Okay, here's a little picture of my little friend. Okay, now it's a fish, I know, but think about this little fish as somebody with a disability. So hello, I have a disability. Okay, here's the quote. And as I read it, I want you to think about students with disabilities. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So do you ever feel like a fish out of water on campus or when you're asked to do a task that you're unfamiliar with? I know I have. Have you ever been asked to climb a tree when you're a fish, right? And I've thought about this fish, and I've thought about, okay, if he had prosthetics and a water tank, could he climb the tree? Better yet, what if we put that tree in the water? How fast could he then climb that tree? Well, all these things are considered accommodations, and that is how DSPS can help students. So what are accommodations? Academic accommodations are designed to reduce or eliminate barriers in the learning environment to ensure students with disabilities have equal access and opportunity to learn and fully participate. Now, some people think that this might be an unfair advantage. So let me explain what accommodations are and what they are not. I think that is a good distinction to have. So accommodations versus this word modifications. And to make it a little more simple, I have color coded it to be accommodations good, green, modifications, they're not bad because they're used in the K-12 system. But when students assume we can modify in the college setting, then it becomes bad, okay? So here are some examples. Academic accommodations change the way that information is presented, the way that students demonstrate their knowledge, or the time frame allowed on time tests. Whereas academic modifications fundamentally alter the content or the level or rigor of a course. We do not do that. Academic accommodations are required by law in higher education based on verified disabilities. Modifications are not. We come back to this word reasonable. What is a reasonable accommodation? This question is answered through a collaboration with the student, campus DSPS, campus administration, and when necessary, we do consult with the Office of Civil Rights and the district level advisors sometimes, right? And so when it comes to an accommodation, here is a list of the ones that you might see on a faculty notification letter. Alternative testing accommodations, extended time on tests. Priority registration isn't on there, but our students do get it. Alternate media production, so electronic text, enlarged print, braille, things like that. Note-taking assistance or technology, on-campus mobility assistance, our Dev Serve classes, reader-writer assistant, sign language interpreter, preferential seating, computer equipment, and software. So these are some accommodations. You might see something on your FNL that says e-text. I don't know why we can't get that off, but that's not your responsibility as an instructor. That's more of just they have access to electronic versions of their textbooks through the DSPS office. But if it does say something like extended time on tests and quizzes, that is something that is with the instructor. Or our deaf and hard of hearing students, we need to make sure we have captions on our things. Make sure you know how to request an interpreter if they want to come to your office hours. We do tell the student they need to be the ones to do that. But if you want to offer that as like, hey, I'll even request the interpreter for you. Awesome. That shows that you're willing to collaborate with them and be on their side. But think about if all of these were provided to all students, what type of campus would we have? It would be something like what Stevie Wonder says. We need to make every single thing accessible to every single person with a disability. Now, remember this about accessibility, because I think some people have a different idea when it comes to this. And I'm only speaking from the DSPS counselors here, or maybe it's just me, but, and I put it in quotes, accessibility does not mean success. We can provide all the accommodations to a student and they might not be successful. And that's okay. I feel like sometimes we get instructors who say, the student, they're with you guys, DSPS, and they're not going to pass. I don't know what to do. I'm like, sometimes they don't pass and it's okay. So again, we're realistic too with DSPS, right? So I want you to feel like we're not here to just pass everybody, okay? So accessibility, again, does not mean success. And I think sometimes our students need to be aware of that, because in the K through 12 system, love them. They have a hard job, but success is guaranteed. They will either graduate with a certificate or a diploma. But in the college setting, success is not guaranteed. And so they need to kind of remember that difference. I know it sounds mean, but any thoughts about that? Because this is kind of new to kind of throw out there for us.
Yeah, just sorry, Daniel, just to go off of that. Yeah, a lot of our incoming students, they come in kind of with that mindset of they are going to be guaranteed success. And then they get to college, they get to your guys' classes, meetings with everybody here, and that's not the case. And so we have found that it's kind of difficult for these students to kind of transition from learning about it's not success, and you still have to put in the work, you still have to study, you still have to pass the same exam as everybody else, you still have to write the same amount of writing as anybody else. And that's the part that gets kind of difficult for these students to understand, is because, like Danielle had mentioned, a lot of these students have had modifications in high school. So, for example, just quick example, instead of writing 10 pages, they'll have to write like 3. Instead of doing, 100 math problems on their exam, they'll do like 10. So it's kind of difficult for them to understand that they have to still complete the same assignments, tests, exams as any other general student. So that's, those are things that we work on at DSPS as well, is teaching them those differences. And as Danielle has said, it can get a little difficult because they're not used to that. And for 4 years, it's kind of been, your past. We'll modify your your letter grades. You know, if you get a 70% in high school, that's an A. So we've seen some things on their IEP plans from high school that are, it's really difficult for us to modify or for these students to kind of understand. And so just some thoughts for you guys is, yeah, it could be a difficult transition for these students.
Perfect. Thank you, Fuchi. Fuchi is working with our TTC students, so transition to college. He's out there with these high school seniors. And so he is like boots on the ground, sees the change they have to go through from modifications to accommodations. So thank you, Fuchi. Yeah. And I would also put in there, I don't know about you guys, but I have met with more parents this last semester than ever before. And that is just hasn't been typical, because they're used to having these IEP meetings in high school where they think I have access to their grades and their assignments, and we meet every, month or whatever it was. And nope, I'm so sorry, but you're in control. You're driving the bus here. You need to be on top of your assignments. I don't have access to that. I don't talk to your teachers. I'm not stalking you. Like it's a student-driven program. I'm here for you, and I want to help you, and I will help you collaborate with your teachers and advocate for you. But again, it is student driven. So thank you, Fuchi. Yeah, so it's a change. It's a learning curve for students. Well, other services in our DSPS office include our Workability 3 program. This is a program in conjunction with the Department of Rehab. Melissa Affelt is the counselor coordinator. She also has a full-time job developer and counselor, Taylor and Susan. The Student Support Services, SSS Trio, just for students with disabilities. We do have an SSS General, and we do have an SSS Disability. And that's me. Used to be Ashley's job, and then, she was kind enough to let me have it. So no, Ashley's our coordinator. And we've got learning disability assessments by our very own learning disability specialist, Patrick. And our DSPS counselor coordinator who holds this all together is Ashley. So honestly, and TTC, sorry, Fuchi, I forgot to put you on here, but he's kind of like the one bringing us in, and then he lets us all have them in these programs. So thank you to Fuchi as well. So here's just kind of some services. So again, what Alejandra said was great. Show the benefits. We've got programs within our program that they can be a part of. So how do you work with the DSPS office? Have you worked with us before? And if you haven't, I would highly encourage you to stop by, come and see what we do. I love that you guys are here in our Flex Day presentations. So hopefully it's been a good experience. If it hasn't, you could tell Dr. Morgan, because we don't want to hear it. No. But hopefully it's been good. And if it hasn't, please let us know, and please refer your students to us. So we started the presentation with cats, so we're going to end with some cats, okay? So here we go. I have some questions for you. On a scale of cats, how will you now approach a student with a disability? So in the chat, let me know. Oh, thanks, Rebecca. So nobody's answering, but I'm sure you're going to approach them as like, oh, cool. Number one, no, number two, Pedro. Yes, exactly. Hopefully you'll approach them like any other student, right? Yep. Number four, hey, Gil, come on, man. Cool. Right on. Okay. I'm glad, Gil. See, I understood the humor, I hope. So, all right. But more importantly, here's the next question, okay? Think about this. On a scale of cats, how will a student approach you? How will a student with a disability approach you? Okay, based off of your ability to help them problem solve, critically think, and if you have a caring heart, they're going to approach you number one, number two, even maybe number 7. So excited to see you because they know that you are an advocate. Yes, number 7, excitement. Thank you, Gil. You're on track now. I love it. Well, thank you guys for attending our presentation today. We'll stop the share. We'll even stop the recording to see if you guys have any questions or anything like that. Thanks again, you guys, for being here. And thank you for helping us at DSPS.